Good morning, welcome everyone. Thank you very much for being here. Thank you very much for joining this online session in the framework of our Future Leaders Forum, a joint initiative of CIDOB, the Barcelona Center for International Affairs, and Santander, Banco Santander, one of the key leading banks in Spain and beyond, dealing with specifically with a lot of interest on the digital aspects that we will be discussing today. As I was saying, this is our fourth edition of the Future Leaders Forum. So it means that throughout the last 4 years, we have been gathering in this format a series of experts and young leaders working on all things digital. And if not already leaders of today, leaders certainly of tomorrow, and their capacity to explore the new areas of technology and their impact on our societies. That has always been the objective of this Future Leaders Forum, and we're very happy, of course, that this fourth edition is also taking place in the framework of our 50th anniversary of CIDOB, which we are celebrating this year 2023, in which many activities are taking place into the different lines of research that we have. One specific line of research that is very timely for this initiative today is that for the last year we have consolidated our work on technology, democracy and rights. In other words, the impact of technologies and social media included in those technologies into the state of our democracies and the state of our public debate, and of course the impact that these technologies have on policy making on the side of those who take the decisions. But in any case, this is part of our broad agenda. But for today, we are trying to breach the digital governance gap. That means to what extent international cooperation and regulation can help us deal with the impact of emerging technologies, of their impact that they have on multiple sectors of our society. That includes academia and knowledge in general, but that also includes private companies. It includes public administrations and all sort of actors that make out of this technological world a very complex world, and one that also needs regulation and needs to be following the criteria of ethic use of technologies and just use of these technologies in order to leave no one behind in this endeavor. So for that, and it's a very specific moment to discuss this, because the European Union is also putting forward a series of initiatives from the Digital Services Act and others that are contributing to the regulation of these technological advancements. But also this regulation doesn't need to stop only at the European level and needs to go beyond the European level to also include the more international aspect of regulation. But we're very happy that this year we also conveyed a total of 35 young leaders under 35 years of age that are already making a change in their approach to technology, into how they work with technology on a daily basis. And of course, through their work, they also aim at improving this international cooperation and the regulation of emerging technologies. These 35 young leaders that we will be presenting very shortly add up to the rest of the leaders that have been identified in the previous editions of this joint initiative of CIDOB and Santander, the Future Leaders Forum. So that means that up until today, in the last 4 editions, including this one, we have gathered about 140 emerging leaders that are already working on these issues. And of course, it's a very rich database of identified young leaders that are already making a difference, and that we are very happy to convene every year with the joint effort of Banco Santander and with the effort of also those who are behind this initiative. But let me first introduce to all of you the 35 leaders of today, of this year, through the list that we have gathered. And then we will engage into a discussion, and I will introduce you to the rest of the speakers that will join me for this occasion for today. So please welcome the 35 young leaders of the 2023 cohort who are also present here following our discussions today.
International cooperation efforts to regulate the digital economy can really take off if we focus on the benefits cooperation can bring, enabling innovation, avoiding fragmentation of rules, and ensuring inclusive development.
It's important that all relevant actors acknowledge the risks arising from these technologies and also the need to address these risks proactively.
We can do so by strengthening international digital cooperation and overcoming the existing regulatory fragmentation, which requires all stakeholders to work inclusively across sectors.
While technical issues in digital technologies have established fora for consensus building, social considerations in AI require cultural shifts supporting stronger governmental and international measures based on shared values.
Inclusivity and equity are key in ensuring that the governance and regulation of new and emerging tech is effective and meaningful.
We need shared principles, effective institutions, but perhaps most importantly, we need to go beyond rulemaking and actually build technology in the public sector.
We must ensure that the international conversation on this remains open and as inclusive as possible, and we focus on establishing standards that take into account the threats that we're commonly facing.
We should be aiming for a human-centric and eco-centric tech landscape with universal governance and a shared responsibility between big and small tech.
Regulation of technology must be feminist to address current power dimensions and put marginalized groups in focus.
In a world facing ever-evolving digital threats, international efforts in cybersecurity require cooperation, multi-stakeholder dialogue, knowledge sharing, and inclusivity.
Cooperation on digital technology issues is not just about governments and corporations, it's also about people. We must facilitate a framework that listens more to the diverse voices in our global community.
States, private companies, civil society, and individuals, by communicating, can develop a common understanding of the global technological challenges and thus be better placed to regulate them in an efficient and effective way.
Governments play a pivotal role in shaping the AI innovation landscape, serving as both regulators and facilitators. On the other hand, companies need to lean in to demonstrate openness and cooperation to meet these goals.
We should adopt a risk-based approach, prohibiting inadmissible risks produced by new digital technologies and setting an ex-ante justificatory model based on participatory impact assessment.
It is important that we ensure to foster meaningful participation of voices to be able to find relevant solutions that address the multi-level, multi-issue, and multi-stakeholder nature of digital and technology governance.
International cooperation on tech issues will require focus. It will require honing in on the issues that will most benefit from meaningful international cooperation to really drive progress.
Interstate cooperation is not enough. Actionable multi-stakeholder formats like the Christchurch Call are needed. And in AI, for example, the UN's current efforts must keep in mind whether civil society is giving power beyond formal presence.
Well, I think it is necessary to create platforms for all-inclusive dialogue to discuss and coordinate efforts to regulate the digital sphere.
The international community needs to do not more, but more meaningful digital cooperation, including countries with less resources and including stakeholders that are most affected by the risks of emerging technologies.
It is essential that a multi-stakeholder approach to the governance of digital issues is, in both theory and principle, fairly representative of stakeholders from the global south, especially Africa.
The EU has a crucial role to play in preventing excess fragmentation among democratic partners and driving legislation on these matters to ensure we can effectively regulate tech.
First, going from new initiatives to effective coordination of existing ones.
Second, making sure that developing countries are a key part of the conversation. And third, that we're effectively tackling the social harms by working with civil society.
It is imperative to understand different visions, normative aspirations, and approaches to regulate digital and technology issues in different socio-political contexts.
We should learn from previous experiences in regulating digital technology, such as internet governance, and focus on inclusion as well as education of all relevant stakeholders and avoid forum shopping.
Key stakeholders, governments, businesses, expert communities should develop and apply digital and cyber diplomacy toolboxes and joint framing of the international agenda.
The first thing is to agree on how international applies to these issues. The second thing is to ensure coordination and consistency across different forums. And the third is to have a multi-stakeholder, multidisciplinary approach to those issues.
International cooperation is needed to take stock of the harms and risks posed by digital and other technologies like AI.
Through international cooperation, we can ensure effective regulation by adopting adaptive frameworks for regulation so that the dialogue on how to regulate those technologies does not end by the time the first jurisdiction adopts its laws.
We must adopt a human-centric approach, prevent the immediate obsolescence of our regulations, establish public-private partnerships, and foster harmonized and convergent intergovernmental processes.
I think we need to realize that international cooperation on digital technologies will be driven by the need to ensure stability in a world where there's increasing geopolitical complexities.
The international community should foster tools that can become a driver of international cooperation, such as the creation of international standards free of political bias or the promotion of binding agreements for the ethical development and use of new technologies.
Global unanimous regulating of digital and cyber issues will never be feasible, but the EU should continue to promote its values through various means, be it on the UN level, with like-minded partners, or through bilateral and regional programs all around the world.
When it comes to digital and internet policies, a broader stakeholder participation in policy-making and decision-making processes are needed based on the multi-stakeholder approach and consensus.
We need to build the institutions fit for our new digital era. The cornerstones of these are democratic control, participation, and public infrastructure.
The implementation of joint roadmaps and the alignment to international standards of mutual interest in relation to digital governance and risk management will be an important part of advancing international alignment.
So thank you very much. We heard the 35 voices of the cohort of this year. So first of all, congratulations to all of you for having been chosen as part of the initiative into the selection of the 35 voices that are making a change already in international cooperation and regulation of emerging technologies. But let me now give the floor to Juan Jimenez. Juan Jimenez is the Global Director of Digital Public Policy, precisely at the Santander Group, and leading the work of the bank in all things digital. He will introduce to us the different priorities that he and his team are working on, and then we will move on to the rest of the speakers. So Juan, let me give you the floor now. Thank you very much for your support and for being here with us today.
Thank you, CIDOB representatives. It's a real pleasure for Santander Group to be part of this initiative. The young leaders is so important for us. First of all, congratulations to all of you guys and gals. Amazing speech over there, resonates pretty well with the priorities we have at Santander. And more broadly speaking, I guess the global priorities for the banking industry when it comes to mastering the technology, thriving in the wave of innovation, and performing the so-called digital transformation to better serve our clients and partners. Let me share with you a bit of the narrative of Santander Group when it comes to technology and digital. As you know as well as we do that banks are natural-born innovators since Middle Ages to nowadays. We've been looking into the different technologies and trailblazing the avenues of the technologies. Historically, banks have built solutions leveraging these new technologies to anticipate the consumer habits and also facilitate the progress. The quest for seeking value and delivering it to shareholders as well have pushed top management teams to explore the so-called digital transformation. We've been taking advantage of the different exponential technologies that we now have at hand. I'm sure that you heard about these exponential technologies, the so-called AI, but not only. Blockchain is as well another one, IoT, the cloud computing, and of course, something that we have ahead of us, which is the quantum revolution. But to provide you with a bit of an example of what we've been doing with technology, it's always better to see it in terms of examples. Technology has opened a new way of thinking traditional business. The development of tokenized securities is one of the examples that shows how markets can be transformed by the usage of technology. We already have issued some native digital bonds, which shows how DLTs, or distributed ledger technologies, and the smart contracts can drive efficiency, gaining automation and disintermediation of capital markets. But we don't need to look so far to feel the change. Payments business is probably one of the most profoundly changed in the last years due to the digital disruption. Payments have become instant, contactless, and fully integrated in our digital lives. Peer-to-peer payments are becoming part of our daily lives. Solutions as Bizum in Spain, that serves more than 20 million clients, are used today to connect peer-to-peer payments every day. And we want to go farther by exploring how tokenized deposits could enhance programmability and provide solutions to new payments in the new economy. Technology is also enabling us to improve our risk management capabilities. Thanks to the AI, we can anticipate better the customer needs and help them meet their financial commitments. We're using AI to perform our anti-money laundering as well, and also performing our cybersecurity models, identifying new malicious patterns. And at the same time, we can offer new services to clients, for example, managing their investment portfolios through robo-advisors that until now were available only to high net worth individuals. So this is a democratization of the access to wealth management. Also, another technologies that are quite famous as the GPT language models, we are exploring new ways to improve efficiency in our operations while reducing operational risk. Finally, technology has also transformed the way we operate. We are migrating our core bank into cloud with 80% of our IT infrastructure already migrated into cloud computing. And this transformation will allow the bank to be more agile, developing new services, accessing easier and faster to transactional data, and be more efficient, reducing at the same time the IT infrastructure energy consumption by 70%. Cloud has become key to meet the needs of the business in an efficient and flexible way, as well as to be able to scale our services globally. If you can ping a slide that I prepared for you guys that depicts a bit of the regulation that we have in front of us. These 5 circles depict quite well the 5 domains of innovation that are being regulated as we speak. Digital resilience through DORA, crypto assets through MiCA, artificial intelligence through the AI Act, data through Data Act and FIDA, and digital markets through the DMA. This is at European level. When you look at other jurisdictions, you find somehow similar regulation, but all this transforming is accelerating, and the European authorities are in the process of developing and implementing new regulations that will shape the digital landscape. As I mentioned, DORA, MiCA, and the DMA have been positive steps forward that now need to be further developed in the second law level regulations. New regulations being discussed such as AI Act and Data Act, or the recently approved FIDA in the financial sector, will set the framework for the future development of the data economy. and the development of the European industry in strategic technologies such as AI or cloud. Europe is also in the process of developing a European digital identity and also launching the CBDC, the digital euro, that will provide citizens with public solutions to manage their identity and to pay with public money. Of course, at Santander, we are supporting all these initiatives, as they're shaping the way we operate, shaping the way we transform our infrastructure, and shaping as well the way we serve better our clients. Again, I reiterate the congratulations to all of you guys. My recommendation for you is enjoy, thrive, and try to make an impact, positive impact from the different parts where you operate into digital transformation and the way we build the world for the future. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Juan. It's really impressive, the amount of work that you're doing on this, and we're very happy that you agreed to share it with us. And I'm sure it has been of a lot of importance to most of the leaders that are also following our conversation. Let me now move to the next section of our public discussion that we're having this morning on the occasion of the 4th edition of the Future Leaders Forum, which is basically, as I mentioned at the beginning, getting some insights on one of the most important institutions doing work on regulation of technologies, and that is, of course, the European Union, who has launched a series of initiatives in the last few years that are acting as an avant-garde of the regulation in the emerging technologies, in all things related to the role of on privacy, on the impact of these technologies on the labor markets, on the daily life of our citizens. And that is, of course, the work that has been done from DG Connect, from the Director General of Communication, Networks, Content and Technology of the European Commission. And we're very happy and very pleased to have among us Roberto Viola, who is the Director General of DG Connect, to share with us some of the advancements that the European Union is working on, and then also to be able to stay with us for a few minutes and see if we have time for a couple of questions. So I assume Roberto Viola is ready for connection, so I will give him the floor now. Can't see him on screen. Is Roberto here? It doesn't seem to be connecting at this point, or at least not that I can see him or hear him. But in any case, while we wait until he is connected, let me then move to the next section and see his availability in the coming minutes. We had foreseen some also presentations for the work that is being done from two different parts of the spectrum of technologies, and that is from the research community, from the think tank community, the work that we are doing from CIDOB on technology. Let me see if Roberto is now on screen. Okay, I think there are a few problems of connection, but let me proceed then, because as I was saying, we have speakers from the research community, from the think tank community. That is Marta Galceran, who's a research fellow here at CIDOB, at the Barcelona Center for International Affairs, working in the framework of the Global Cities program, and working a lot on the impact of technologies onto cities, and how are cities also an actor in the regulation of such technologies. I will give her the floor first, and then I will move, if Roberto is still not on screen, I will move to the next speaker. So Marta, perhaps I can start with you, and you can introduce the work that you are doing from the Global Cities Program, and then we proceed. So Marta, the floor is yours.
Okay, fantastic. Well, thank you very much, Paul. So the topic of today is regulation of emerging technologies, and I will be speaking mostly about artificial intelligence, which is the work where we are doing at CIDOB. So I'm a researcher from the Global Cities Program, and we try to cope or understand how cities around the world are trying to respond. So a variety of challenges, be it environmental, but also socioeconomical or digital. And of course, we cannot discuss the challenges cities are facing without researching or looking into the digital. So AI, the nice thing or the beauty thing or the worrying thing, depending on how you want to label it, about artificial intelligence, and probably also is the case for other emerging technologies, is that it generates both anxiety and excitement. So two same things within one technology: anxiety and excitement. Excitement, why? Because AI is seen as a common good, because it's seen as a technology that can facilitate advancement in many domains that may change humanity for the better. This means that the huge potential that artificial intelligence has to solve many of the problems that we have means that there are many actors around the world, or actually all of us, that want have a wide interest, or we all want to deploy it for the good. This excitement can be seen in the private sector, right? There's huge market opportunities, but there's a huge opportunities in developing new services, new products, optimize the way the private sector is working. This excitement is also seen in governments, national governments, but also local governments, because they can provide better services to their residents. And this excitement is also seen in people, like when all of us discovered about ChatGPT at the beginning, it's fun to play with that, and you see that there are huge opportunities also there. But with opportunities come also risks, and this is the second part. So excitement and anxiety. Anxiety, because this technology has also huge implications in terms of risks and rights, also important. Risks that need to be prevented if possible, and if not, at least mitigated. And this is why it's important to have regulation, and that it's important, or we cannot assume the cost of non-regulating these technologies. But this is difficult. Addressing risk is very difficult. First, because we don't know still many of those risks. So how are you going to regulate something that you don't know? This is it requires an exercise of imagination, of forecasting that it's not easy, and also because we have different levels of risk toleration. I mean, perhaps what is very risky for me, it's not as risky for another person, another country, another organization. So we need to find common approach to those risks. But I was mentioning anxiety in terms of risk and rights, and this is also difficult because we know that AI has the potential, and we are already seeing it. I mean, it's not that it has the potential; it's a reality to infringe many important rights. So we need to ensure that these rights are enforced when we develop these technologies. And again, this is also difficult because first, again, we still don't know the impact on many of those rights. So again, an exercise of imagination. And for those rights that we already know it, there are different ways of approaching it, different points to approach rights, different understandings of who is responsible, who is to held accountable. This is also something that is preventing global cooperation. And at the end of the day, it also requires gravity, courage. At the end of the day, probably this is something that probably Mr. Viola would already discussed in his intervention about the AI, European AI artificially led. But for me, the interesting thing about this legislative, this law is not so much that is creating or setting technical standards, which will do, but rather that it's creating moral standards. This is something completely different. With the AI Act, is being brave enough to decide that some applications of artificial intelligence, even if they are technically feasible, because some are them, like social scoring, they are not morally acceptable. So we can deploy them, but we don't want to do that. And this requires courage. And again, the level of courage or the understanding of courage is different among different actors. I see Mr. Robert Viola has just joined us. Perhaps I can leave it here, Paul. Paul, I cannot hear you.
Sorry, let's leave it here, as I said, with the courage that you commend to the public actors, and that includes, of course, the European Commission. So let me give the floor now to Roberto Viola, the Director General of DG Connect, for presenting the initiatives of the European Commission in that regard, and then we proceed with the conversation once he has to leave us. So, Mr. Viola, the floor is yours. Thank you very much for joining. It's a pleasure to have you on board. You're on mute, sorry.
Now, can you hear now?
All good, thank you.
You can see me as well, I guess.
Yes, we can see you.
Good. So many thanks for the invitation. It's really a pleasure to be part of this conversation. I think it's a very important conversation directed to young leaders, and the world needs young leaders. You know, I mean, if you consider the most advanced economies and you look at the average age of the population, and you see that this is going up, not down, which is good news for all of us, because life expectancy is going up. But at the same time, it's a warning signal in terms of the workforce that is shrinking in a moment where we have a number of structural crises which require actually the opposite, more workforce and the increase of productivity. So the world lives in what President Biden has described the inflection point, where there are a number of world instabilities when it comes to security. We have a number of challenges. We had the COVID, then the aggression of Russia to Ukraine, then the current Middle East crisis. All of this add to the instability, and also the concern in Europe, in the United States, about de-risking our economy, which means making sure that key elements of supply chains are controlled in a way that we do not expose our fellow citizens to risks when it comes to technology that can be used against them. That means that the era of globalization, just by optimizing value chains, it's a bit over. And now we are more in an era where, I mean, local production, issues about control of raw material, issues about the control of technologies are very important. And they are important in Europe, and they're important in the United States, they're important in Japan, a bit everywhere in the democratic world. What clearly this means is that we need, I mean, competent workforce, young workforce, but also we need to be very attentive to new technologies from the point of view of not introducing risk, helping the citizens, and not working against the citizens. I think in this, of course, comes the mission of the Directorate General that I represent, DG Connect, which is responsible in the European Commission for all the new technologies, and especially all the emerging technologies, from artificial intelligence to quantum. It's responsible for cybersecurity, for cloud, so whatever is part of this toolbox. And when speaking to young leaders, I normally have the impression, and I apologize in advance for stereotyping a bit, that young leaders are very much focused on the task, on the execution, whilst more mature leaders are a bit more attentive to the political implication of things. Now, I think this is, as I said, the stereotype, and it's important that in this conversation we're trying to mix the two, because, of course, as I said, we need a new really season of enhanced productivity and enhanced entrepreneurship and new ideas, but also we need to be very attentive to the geopolitical context. In this, clearly, it was said, let me repeat it, AI is the real game changer. AI, especially the new forms of AI is known and used the last 30 years, but the acceleration of computing, availability of data, and the new generation of algorithms we are seeing, I mean, like generative AI, it makes the whole discussion about the state of the world's economy, the state of technology, the future direction, very, very interesting. Because with AI, of course, some of the singularities of global production chains can be cured, the services can be more effective, the average productivity of people can go up. But at the same with the same token, we have risks. We have risks which are inherent to the technology, and we have risks which stem from the fact that there could be malicious actors exploiting AI. And this is the reason why, I mean, the whole way of looking at technologies for the European Union is based on the idea that technologies, as I said, should put the people at the center, but then should allow also the innovation which is given back to the people. Because, of course, an extreme situation by which you only protect, it's really really not an optimal, it's really poor output, I would say, of the policy exercise, because people don't have the benefit of the best possible technology. It was said, AI is a common good. The common good is that AI can improve medicine, can improve and help us in fighting climate change and doing the energy transition, which is very much needed in a sustainable way. So we need AI, we need new technologies, but they should work for people. And that's also why the other extreme is not okay. I mean, that simply there are no rules, there's no guardrails, because we have seen it already with the atomic energy. I mean, without guardrails, human beings sometimes are capable to do things very nasty to themselves. So this equilibrium needs to be found, and that's a bit the attempt that we are doing in the European Union. First, by having now a charter of the fundamental rights when it comes to the digital society, where, I mean, we put certain principles or red lines not to be trespassed about in people liberty to move, to speak, to be free, I mean, to choose the best services, not to be controlled if there's no specific justification because of a crime or because of other concerns. So this is also a little bit the line in all, I mean, the European rules for the internet, the Digital Service Act, the Digital Market Act, where we leave, I mean, economic actors such as the large online platform free to offer their service, which are good for the society, but at the same time, with the size, it comes responsibility. And that's the whole idea that algorithmic amplification that could be dangerous for the free speech, algorithmic amplification that could amplify illegal content should be contained, and measures should be taken. The AI Act has a similar approach, so basically does not regulate AI, in all its forms. I mean, there are many applications of AI that are simply not good, and there's no reason to be worried about. But it focalizes more on certain prohibitions. It was mentioned that, I mean, in the European Union, social scoring will be absolutely prohibited. Using AI against kids, using AI exploiting emotions of people to do things, induce people to do things they don't want to do, or using AI a la Minority Report. So that means, I mean, using predictive policing to really, let's say, to constrain the liberty of people even before they have committed the crime. That would not be, of course, acceptable for a democratic society. And then the risks which are more immediate, which are about products risk. So for instance, AI in healthcare, to make sure that the algorithms are tested, the third-party verification where there are certain claims. I mean, like, I mean, an image recognition system for skin cancer, or AI in automotive. I mean, autonomous drive is the clear example. Or in social activities which are particularly sensitive, like looking for a job, asking for a loan for your house, going to a university, being admitted to an HR room in case of a medical emergency. So in all those cases, we are saying AI can be used, can be a factor of optimization, but there's a risk. There's a risk of bias, there's a risk of error, there's a risk of discrimination. Then, more recently, there's been a broader debate about what I would call horizontal risk, which go beyond the individual products based on AI, which are introduced by this very large algorithm, such as extremely large generative AI algorithms. Some call them frontier models. Now, the discussion going on in the finalization of the AI Act is to which extent this horizontal risk should be captured on their own rather than on single products. And you have seen that at the international level, there are attempts to have voluntary code of conduct, the idea to have some reporting about internal check that are done about those algorithms that's contained in the US executive order, or the G7 code of conduct is another example. Europe is proposing legislation, first jurisdiction that really tries to make a comprehensive legislation. So the question is, are code of conducts enough? For what I said before about history, about the way, technology evolves, we think code of conducts are good. It is a good starting point, but they are not enough in the long term. In the long term, we need solid standards for verification. We need the companies to commit to behavior that can be held responsible for. And that's why now we are trying to see how to balance in the final version of the AI Act this more horizontal aspect about very large algorithms which affect every product, every activity. So that's a bit the approach. Now, another element which is very important in this idea that technology should serve the good is that public investment should go in opening up infrastructure and support to entrepreneurs, especially when they are small, they are young. And that's the whole idea in investing in very large computing infrastructure. We have now invested in the largest supercomputing network of the world. And in Barcelona, there will be very soon the inauguration of Mare Nostrum 5, which is already, at the top 10 of supercomputers in the world. And the idea is to open those supercomputers to startups, to innovators that want to really be serious about AI for good, and give them the tools that otherwise they would not have, because of course the supercomputer is beyond the reach of a startup. And if supercomputing is only provided by private company, which they have the legitimate objective to do money, it's not good enough. To have an incentive for startups, because then the only incentive would be either to be acquired or to work for things that optimization profit is the only goal. So we need to inspire from the very beginning in the birth of a company the idea of delivering for society ethical behavior in a way that doesn't cost a fortune or is not a barrier to enter the market, which is the other very difficult exercise. Anyone can do rules. I mean, this is not the issue. But very few can do rules that balance the various interests. Very few can do something which is not only doing rules, but giving the tools to the community to actually be empowered. And I think, of course, by the size, by the importance, the European Union has not only the possibility, but has the duty to do that. This is what we are trying to do. So the message to the final, my final message to the young entrepreneurs, to the young leaders is that, I mean, you need to be attentive to the complexity and the implications of advancing technologies such as AI to make the right choices. And I mean, choosing for sustainability, choosing for being ethical in your business is always the right choice. Many thanks.
Thank you very much, Mr. Viola. Thank you very much for sharing those priorities, for also putting a light on the risks that are coupled with the emergence of these technologies, and also for the proposals and the policies that you are putting forward, the Digital Services Act, the Digital Markets Act, and all the other legislation that the EU is putting forward. So from our side, always at your disposal from CIDOB, the Barcelona Center for International Affairs, very happy to have had you on board for this initiative, new initiative of the Future Leaders Forum that we do together with Santander. And it will be a pleasure to keep our joint work in this regard. So thank you very much for joining us.
You have my commitment, and really congratulations for this initiative. I think it's really the right one at the right moment. Well done.
It's a pleasure. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye. All right. So we will continue with our the rest of the discussion that we were having. Marta was putting forward also the ideas of the risks that come associated with the AI in particular when it comes to the fairness, to how to overcome the bias that algorithms might have in performing their tasks, and the risks of discrimination that these algorithms might put forward, and hence the need for regulation and a fair approach to AI. So Marta, perhaps you would like to finish your statements where you left them, and then we will proceed and move on to Adrià Rodriguez Perez. Marta, please.
Yes, fantastic. Thank you, Paul. So I was talking about anxiety and excitement, right? I think partly what I was just discussing has been reflected also in Mr. Viola presentation, where he was arguing why it's so important to regulate and to get this regulation right. In this sense, the work that the European Union is doing in this sense it's really commendable. So I was saying there is the need to regulate, and this initiative that the EU is pursuing is only one of the many initiatives that exist around the world. There's a consensus, a wide consensus that we need to regulate, and there had been active discussion around that in several forums, G20, G7, with the Hiroshima process, OECD, recently also the UN. The problem is how to approach this regulation. So there is no question on whether regulate or not, but the problem is how. And most importantly, how to advance or how to solve the problems that we have in establishing a working global cooperation around this regulation challenge. Several messages I want to explore or present today. First, today, and I'm not really optimistic, I should say, we have no global institution that has a substantive mandate to develop a policy model or a regulation that is truly universal. There have many attempts, but we don't have that. And this means that it's very difficult to really initiate an international framework. So we are still very far from there. Partly because what I was explaining at the beginning about the different approaches to risk, different approaches to morality, different approaches to rights. This leads to a plurality of frameworks, sometimes overlapping, but also plurality of authorities. I mean, it's not only that we have different understandings, it's also that we have many actors that do have authority in regulation acting at the same time. And we have the private sector. I was just having a conversation, for instance, last week with a guy from Microsoft that he was telling me, look, at Microsoft, it was a programmer and an IT developer that was deciding what is and what is not, for instance, pornography. A person without humanistic background, without human rights, but it's a challenge that some of those understandings, some of these very difficult decisions are being taken within some companies because we don't have a regulation in place. I mean, there's a cost in non-regulation. That's important to take into consideration. But also, of course, other important authorities are states and cities. And here is what I want to focus the last segment of mass intervention, because this is also the area that I know the most, working on the Global Cities program. So why cities? This is a good question, right? Cities at the end of the day are, you may argue, that are affected or are embedded within the regulations that already some national governments are taking. So why it's important to look at what specifically cities are doing about that and how they can contribute to this, to bridge this gap of global governance. And the first important thing to take into consideration here is that there has been a lot of talk on AI about existential risks. So, you know, AI will destroy humanity. But what should really concern us is not those existential risks, but rather the more day-to-day risk that AI is already posing, it's already creating when certain services are delivered to the residents, where certain applications are enabled. Those are risks that also local governments are facing are day-to-day, because just to give you an idea, we have at CIDOB, we developed an atlas of urban artificial intelligence. You can find it on our website. We collect several use cases that of algorithmic tools being adopted by cities around the world. When you look at what cities are doing with AI, they are, for instance, we find applications related to transport, to education, to employment, to welfare. All those applications, if we take into consideration the AI, the European AI Act, will fall into the category of high risk or limited risk. So there is a stake for city governments to be concerned about how these applications are being regulated, because they are the ones that they are using mostly on their jurisdictions. This is important. Another very classical example of a local administration using AI, chatbots. Chatbots are classified under limited risk category under this AI Act. So we need to, for instance, it's important to for a citizen when it's interacting with administration to know that they are speaking with a chatbot, not with a real person. This is why it's categorized as limited risk. On the other side, so city governments are dealing with risk on a daily basis. Also importantly, when dealing with this risk, if AI fails, when these applications are being deployed, they will be held accountable. Yes, it will be a private company probably providing this solution, because most local governments are not developing technology in-house, but they will probably have to face the cost, be it an efficiency cost, like not being able to provide the services that they said that they need to provide. This is an efficiency cost. A moral cost, what happens if there's a bad allocation of resources on social services. I mean, this is something that should concern us all. And also political cost. If you're not doing your job right and you're creating harm to the society, this has also political implications. But at the same time, they cannot afford not engaging with AI. right? Because AI, there are some numbers that say that AI will even enable, I think it's in 2 years or so, even 30% of all smart city applications. I mean, there's a huge potential on improving services within local administration. So it's, yes, we need to engage with AI, but we need to do it in a way that it provides guardrails, safeguards, that it's safe, trustworthy. So there's an interest on local governments to have good regulations in place. So we are saying we have this global governance gap, we have regulations being developed, but we still have some issues with having the good regulations in place. So what are local governments doing to sort of like address this situation of lack of regulation? Well, they're basically adopting their own regulations. For instance, and this is something that you will find also in our atlas, they are developing their own AI strategies, taking holistic views on how they should approach the development of these technologies, similar to what many countries around the world have already been doing, creating national AI strategies. So local governments are also doing that. They are also establishing public procurement clauses. This is important because I just mentioned most of the technologies are being procured to private sector. There's very few in-house technology development. So we need to make sure, or local governments need to make sure that there are some human rights clauses in place that allow for like if to have a greater degree of control to the technologies that are being purchased, so they are not harmful to the society. Other initiatives, some local governments have had the courage, I was speaking at the beginning, of ban certain uses, like live facial recognition in some streets. They have decided that this is not acceptable, so they have limited or banned it. And there's a huge movement on this direction. For instance, in the United States, they have made also some audits mandatory, or they are just working on establishing working guidelines, also directed towards the workforce working in the administration. So good practices to make sure that when the administration is engaging with AI, it's doing it in a trustworthy way. This is one thing, and finally, this would be my last point, and it's more related to cooperation. Yes, cities are acting; they are pursuing all these sort of measures that I just mentioned, but they're also collaborating internationally, and this is very interesting because they can, in this sense, they're providing guidance, testbed for testing, like cross-border collaboration and regulation around AI. One particular case I also always like to highlight is an AI registry that was developed by the city of Helsinki. An AI register is basically an exercise of transparency of the city council. Is saying, look, I'm using these algorithms for providing these certain services. These algorithms have been trained with this data. If the algorithm fails, we have these provisions in place to correct that. Transparency is very, very important because it allows explicability. And at the end of the day, it also allows correctability. We cannot assume that algorithms will never fail. They will fail, but we need to make sure that we know when they are failing and we can correct them at whatever point. So the city of Helsinki developed this AI register. Interesting, other cities around the world, most relevant example is Amsterdam, saw this solution in Helsinki. Look, this is interesting. I want to have that in my own city. And instead of reinventing the wheel, what the city of Amsterdam did was have established a meeting with the city of Helsinki in order to learn which best and bad practices could be extracted from this particular initiative, so as to implement a similar register in its own jurisdiction. But the story does not finish here. So we have Helsinki and Amsterdam collaborating on this very specific initiative aimed at regulating the use of AI. So how to scale that to other cities? So we have another initiative, and there's a network of major cities in Europe. It's called Eurocities. And with this network, what this network did was creating or using the example of Helsinki and Amsterdam to get other cities to collaborate around the establishment of sort of like a schema, a standard for the implementation of similar algorithm registers in their own cities. So the power of collaboration at the city level is interesting because it allows to experiment with artificial intelligence, and with experimentation comes also awareness of which risk and rights need to be taken into consideration, but also scalability. So experimentation and scalability at the city level. I think time is up. I already used my 10 minutes. So.
Thanks. Thanks, Marta. Very, very interesting to follow also the what you're doing from your program, but also at the city level on this front, and how it can be a model also for scaling up cooperation at other levels on the basis of the good practices that you can identify among cities. But let me now turn to Adrián Rodríguez Pérez, who is also a member of this forum. He was already elected as a young leader in the 2022 edition of the Future Leaders Forum, but he was already a very relevant leader, but he's now being even a more important leader because he joined the private sector. The other area which we would like to explore in this conversation, he is now the public policy researcher and data protection officer on business affairs at SCITL Election Technologies, a company working precisely on these issues. So it will nicely complement what Roberto Viola mentioned on the field of regulation at the European Union level. Nicely complement as well what Marta was saying from the think tank community and the research area. What are also private companies doing in that regard? So Adrián, the floor is yours. Thank you very much for joining and for reuniting with the young leaders that you already met in 2022, but the new ones this year too. The floor is yours. Thank you very much.
No, thank you, and definitely I must start congratulating this year cohort of 35 young leaders under 35 years of age. I'm really impressed, and it's really engaging to see all the activities and initiatives that you're leading at the moment. Also, I would like to congratulate and thank CIDOB and Banco Santander for this initiative. Obviously, thank the fact that I was chosen last year to be part of this excellent initiative. And I'm here today having the opportunity to share some insights from the private sector, but also for choosing this year's topic for the Young Leaders Forum. Because unfortunately, I will continue where Marta left it regarding the pessimistic approach or view towards cooperation on digital tech and emerging technologies, because I'm afraid that we need to really revisit the foundations of some of these initiatives. In this regard, there are many interesting issues that have been mentioned so far, but I would like to highlight 4 keywords or concepts that are ubiquitous when it comes to speaking about digital cooperation. The first of these concepts is multi-stakeholderism, right? We insist a lot in the field of internet governance and digital tech about multi-stakeholderism, and many of the speakers today have mentioned or resorted to this new form of diplomacy, inchoated institution of international order. But I've really enjoyed hearing some of the young leaders mentioning meaningful multi-stakeholderism, right? We've been somehow seduced by the idea of multi-stakeholderism, and we love to see it in different fora, the UN, the IGF, but it's also true that multi-stakeholderism by itself may be putting more burdens than actually contributing to internet governance. And in this case, for me, one paramount example is the open-ended group discussing developments in the field of ICT related to international security at the UN. Obviously, the initiative provided an excellent forum for different kinds of actors to share on their views and concerns on developments in ICT, but the conclusions maybe are far from what one would expect, especially from the private sector or even the academic community. And therefore, I would like to raise the issue of, well, multi-stakeholderism, but meaningful multi-stakeholderism. And again, it's really good to see that some young leaders are working on this. Also related to that, I need to bring to the fore the fear or the ghost that it's always haunting us when it comes to internet governance, the ghost of the splinternet or the fragmentation of the internet, right? it seems that because we fear the fragmentation of the internet, we're able or willing to take any cost. But at this point now, maybe we need to start considering that a fragmented internet may be better than the open and global internet that we have now. Obviously, the values of openness, interoperability, and freedom that are embedded to the current internet are desirable, but so are the rights approach and democratic approach, people-centered ideas that are behind some of the initiatives at the EU level. And if moving forward with this rights-based internet or bourgeois internet, as some scholars put it, is the cost, it has the cost of fragmentation, well, maybe we can start considering this. And if we are accepting it, because I think some of the regulations of the EU are already assuming that we can move forward with internet fragmentation, we need to be open and see which are the pros and the cons. And then the third keyword, following multi-stakeholderism and fragmentation, is definitely regulation. We speak a lot about regulation, but unfortunately, regulation is not enough, right? We still cannot assess to what extent new regulations by the EU in the field of digital services and digital markets will change internet behavior. But we can see that already very clearly when it comes to the GDPR, which has been enforced for 5 years now, right? Usually the discussions about changing the nature of the internet or business models that are based on the internet just stay at the level of regulation. But regulation is definitely not enough, and we need to start analyzing how these regulations can be truly implemented. For me, the case of the GDPR is paramount because it has created clear obligations that all operators need to follow when it comes to the processing of personal data. But I don't think we have yet realized that some operators can more easily circumvent or avoid these obligations rather than others. And the issue is that specifically those operators that we wanted to make sure that we're complying with data protection provisions are those who have more means to precisely avoid them, right? A very good contribution said that we need to look both at big tech and small tech. But well, working for an SME, not just the private for the private sector, I realized that the GDPR puts excessive burdens on small and medium enterprises, or I guess it's the same for other small tech initiatives, whereas big tech companies can continue with their business models, which are feeding on personal data, by just paying huge quantities of fines. And for me, that's another problem, because again, regulation cannot be an issue of complying or not complying, especially when it comes to behaviors online. We need to make sure that these regulations are coupled with awareness-raising campaigns. The GDPR is a regulation that aims at realizing a fundamental right that we EU citizens have when it comes to the processing of our personal data. And so far, I don't think the average citizen is aware of the rights that we have. And second, capacity building, right? Because from the side of public administrations, but also from the side of the private sector, we need more tools to make sure that we want to comply, but to make it affordable and feasible for us to comply with these measures. And then the fourth keyword that has been also mentioned a lot today, it's people, right? In the end, it all boils down to people and how do we behave online. And again, this top-down approach of regulations maybe doesn't reach out to people as we would like to see it. And in the end, like it or not, everything will be based on what we as users, as citizens, can do online. And again, I was really happy to hear a contribution that said we need to move forward or move beyond regulation and start talking about developing technologies, because that's actually the case. If we want a healthy internet that is not based on business models that exploit our personal data, that is not based on algorithms that amplify not only information or disinformation, but also harassment and certain forms of online violence, then we need alternatives. Obviously, no matter what, if big tech companies from the US are first willing to take the cost of certain misbehaviors online, and second, are also and also know that they have some sort of monopoly position because there are no alternatives that we as citizens can use. Therefore, it's obvious that it's very unlikely that they will change this behavior. And therefore, we need to insist that this internet has to be the internet of people, but also make sure that people need to be given tools. And need to be given tools to choose and also to become subjects of internet governance. Because again, if we continue with these ideas of multi-stakeholderism at the broadest or highest level debates, where citizens have no direct access, or with EU regulations that are also far from the daily life of citizens, and we don't really exploit the tools that the internet itself is bringing to us in terms of co-creating, discussing, deliberating about the kind of internet that we want, then I'm afraid that it's very unlikely that any aim of a more humane or people-centered internet governance will actually be achieved. Sorry for the pessimistic view, but in this regard, I'm also happy to see that we have a new cohort of 35 young leaders that may bring solutions to these challenges, and I'm very happy to, if possible, continue working with them or start working with them in these initiatives.
Well, thank you very much, Adria. Thank you very much for sharing your insights. And I couldn't help but thinking when you were saying how GDPR has been overcome through regulation by the big companies who have the means and can possibly pay also the fines associated to any breaches to that regulation. Also think about something that we have learned a lot, which is on financial regulations, which at the end of the day have more or less the same problem, right? There are some that have the capacity and the willingness and also the public institutions to enforce compliance with financial regulations, and some others that don't. And I think it's important that that regulation also is able to analyze firsthand, but also then during the implementation phase, according to the purpose of regulation, which is basically a level playing field and the capacity of companies also to operate, be them big companies or small and medium-sized companies, to operate in the framework of that level playing field that has been put forward by regulation. So I think it's an important aspect that you mentioned, and definitely which enriched our discussion this morning. We only have a few minutes left until we have to close it for today on this first segment of the Future Leaders Forum. But I have a question that I would like both you and Marta to address, if possible, in a short time, in a couple of minutes, which comes through our YouTube channel, where people are following this event, which is of course thanking you for all these insightful reflections that you have put forward. And the question goes as follows: we have focused a lot on AI during this forum, and I think it's a good example of how we are regulating in a reactive way rather than a proactive one. Besides new technologies that were mentioned also in the introduction by Juan Jimenez, and that includes IA, blockchain, and so on, which are the areas or issues or technologies that we are not yet regulating, and that we should start thinking about in order to regulate at a later stage? But what is out of our picture? What would you say is the present or future main areas in which should we drawing our attention when it comes to the regulation of emerging technologies? Marta, Adria, if you have a hint that will give us food for thought for next editions, perhaps, of the Future Leaders Forum.
Do you want to go first, Adria?
I think this question was ready for me, because I always insist that we have an uncertain risk because we don't know how it's going to manifest, but we know it's going to have huge implications. That is quantum computing. Basically, nowadays, the capacity that we share to share secrets online or keep certain information private online relies on conventional cryptography that is based on mathematical problems that currently cannot be solved.
we know or we anticipate that quantum computing will be able to solve that. And therefore, from the moment any actor, more benign or more malicious, has quantum computing capacities, we should start getting concerned. And we should start getting concerned now, actually, before that happens, because obviously there are what is called proactive decryption techniques. So basically, anyone can now collect or keep the encrypted data and decrypt it in a few years. And it's for me a very good example of not only regulations are needed, we also need to start thinking of which cryptography will be resilient against quantum computing or resistant against quantum computing. So it's an effort of regulation again, capacity building, and awareness raising that for me it's we lag behind a lot in this regard.
Thanks, Adrià. Marta?
Yeah, Adrià has much more knowledgeable than me on that field, but perhaps I just would like to add a reflection on that. Although I do agree that we are regulating AI somehow reactively, I would say that this is also depending on, there are different approaches to that, and whether you are regulating that proactive or reactive, it also depends on your point of view. And I will want to give you a specific example that Michael Donaldson, the Chief Information Officer of Barcelona City Council, always mentions. When the city of Barcelona started to develop its AI strategy, there was a lot of lack of understanding within the different departments of the administration. They were telling the guys at the IT department, why are you spending time and effort and money on that? It is like science fiction. Why we need to invest in an AI strategy? When ChatGPT arrived, they were like, wow, thanks God we have an AI strategy. So, and this is also, it changed within 1 year. So this idea of being proactive or reactive, I would say that it really depends also on where you are standing. And unfortunately, most of administration tend to be very, very conservative in that field. This is perhaps an explanation of why we are doing it so reactively.
Can I follow up maybe on that point? Because I'm sorry, Marta, but I'm afraid I disagree. I think we respond reactively because, for example, in the case of AI, we already have certain tools. And now here I'm going to show that for GDPR already has provisions on automated decision-making, and it has obviously several provisions on processing of personal data that is used to train algorithms. And we are not relying on those provisions, actually, to make the tools that are already there comply with some of the issues that have been mentioned by Roberto Viola, for example. So why do we wait to have a specific regulation on a specific technology in order to mitigate the risks or negative impacts that this can have on the life of individuals, instead of becoming aware of how the tools that we already have could already contribute to that, considering especially that, well, negotiations for the AI Act are being quite slow, and it seems that they have, again, reached a stalemate. So.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree with that.
Excellent. So I see that there is debate, there is discussion going on, which I'm very grateful for, because that means that the initiative is relevant and timely when it comes to the issues that we have been discussing for the last hour and a few minutes. So I would like to thank you very much, Adrià and Marta, for taking part in this discussion, for also bringing and shedding some light into the discussions that probably the cohort of 2023 is already having for those who know themselves already. But for those who don't, now we have another feature of the program, which is the private session of discussion among the young leaders that have been identified this year, but will also be joined by some of the leaders who participated in previous editions of the Future Leaders Forum, and that will take place in the Teams platform. So when we finish this, I will give you a few minutes to connect there, and we will meet again there. But let me, before I finish on this, let me thank very much, of course, the Santander Group for all the support in in this initiative and for being persistent into putting the issue of digital technologies and their regulation and artificial intelligence and emerging technologies and cooperation at the international level for this occasion, but also in the previous editions in which we discussed other areas of importance for emerging technologies. And we've been doing that for the last 4 years, and hopefully we'll continue doing it in the future. So thank you very much to Banco Santander for the support. Thank you very much to all those who were selected and who agreed to participate in this edition of the Future Leaders Forum and who followed us through YouTube in this first segment. And then, of course, thank you very much also to Roberto Viola for agreeing to connect from Brussels and explain what the Commission is doing in that regard. So thank you all. It's been a pleasure. For all those who have been selected for the list, let's move to the Teams platform to continue our discussion, and we will be led there by Ines Arco, who has been the person behind the initiative and whom I would like to thank very much also for helping us gathering in this format. So see you next time. A pleasure and take care.